Ashleigh and Ian so much for joining us. This is awesome. I'm super excited to have you guys talk to everyone. So wanted to just kick it off with a little bit of the exciting things that have happened with Maker lately. We've partnered with TradeShift. You might have seen some cool news coming out of Zug, in which we announced that along with TradeShift. We're going to go ahead and ask Ashleigh a bit about that and get some more in-depth convos going that you can ask questions about. On June 28th, Chris Padovano, one of our attorneys, spoke about law and economics around Dapps at a conference in San Francisco, which we all very much enjoyed. We'll soon be posting a recording of that, so you can all very much enjoy that. On June 30th, we did a boot camp with the integrations team where they taught some college students about the Maker.js library. You might have seen Ethan do a demo of that a couple weeks ago. June 21st, we also presented at the San Francisco ETH Dev Meetup. And yes, like I said, the TechCrunch event in Zug kicked off just over this weekend. We're also super stoked because Vitalik wore one of our shirts, the one that says, "I'm not stable, but my DAI is." And I made that shirt, so I was really happy to see a genius wearing something that came out of my mouth. Yeah, and in terms of upcoming events, we have ETHBerlin. If you want to apply to hack there, July 13th to the 14th, we'll be in Toronto, actually using DAI, like physical coins, at this cool Bazaar internet Yami-ichi thing. We'll see how that all goes. We'll take some pictures and you guys will get to experience that a bit. And we're excited about that as well. So if you're in Toronto, please come hang out with us there and use some DAI to buy some items at this bazaar.
Cool. Are y'all done, Jess?
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions about anything that we're talking about, feel free to pipe up and interrupt us. Otherwise, just type them in the chat, and then Jess will be keeping an eye on it to ask the questions for you if you're in a meeting room somewhere pretending to be working.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So general technical community management type stuff. There's been a lot going on, and I think that if you've been trolling our subreddit, you probably know about most of them. We got bumped last week and didn't have our community meeting because the foundation proposal meetings with Rune are ongoing, and we lost our spot. So recapping everything might be a bit onerous for this meeting, so I'm going to talk about the highlights. And if anybody missed that or wants some additional detail, just ping us, and we can probably dig into some of these things. But some of the big highlights, we improved the Oasis suite of tools, or the Oasis team improved the Oasis suite of tools, which was fairly amazing. Oasis Direct is now hardware, now supports hardware wallets, which is great. The Oasis Dex is significantly faster than it used to be, which is also great. Lots of usability tweaks as well. There's a post on our blog that goes into some of those details. So if you want to do some more research, check it out there or ask us a question here. We raised the debt ceiling recently as well. So we went from 50 million DAI, circulating DAI cap, to 100 mil. So that gives us significantly more breathing room between now and the launch of multi-collateral. Lots of discussions around that topic as well. Check out our subreddit. We were recently listed on HitBTC, which I think is a good thing. They had some kinks they needed to work out. It seems to be firing on all cylinders now. Significant volume, which shouldn't be unexpected, but it's still nice to see. I think 100 and some K of DAI circulated through that exchange yesterday, which was nice. We've been doing a lot of sort of direct interaction with the community through hackathons and bounties over the last few weeks. Some of them are starting to show some interesting results. We were one of the major sponsors for the Hack Summit that just ended on Sunday. We saw, I think that MakerDAO was the second most popular project that people chose to work on, which was a really cool sort of signal or vote of confidence. There was a team there that built out a tray application for us, which is something that I think would be great for the community, but selfishly, it's something that I've wanted personally for a long time, so I've been pushing this bounty. It's a tray application that keeps an eye on your CDPs and does some monitoring and alerting for you. So if things go south during the day, it will pop up an alert and let you know how things are going, whether you need to take some action. I'm excited about seeing where that goes. The thing that I really wanted to talk about this meeting, though, is sort of meta because it's about more meetings. So we've been having a lot of really, really cool discussions about the foundation proposal, which turned into 2 or 3 other major discussions about the foundation proposal. And I think that we all got this sense that the questions are probably not going to dry up anytime soon, and there's more and more and more we need to explore with these things. So what we're going to be doing this week and for the foreseeable future is implementing 3 calls a week, which kind of feels like a lot, but I think that there's enough content there to justify it. So the plan right now is that we need to have these meetings to help the entire organization internally and externally. So everybody who's a Maker holder or just a Maker fan can have a chance to speak and figure out what our thinking is. So we need to have these meetings to figure out what our cultural consensus is, and then start reaching consensus on the nitty-gritty, like implementation, what we mean by some of the terminology that we use, like what is sustainable finance, what are our values, what's an externality, what is risk. Like these are all major topics that we kind of all need to share the same definitions for, and we need to work through them together. So it's going to be one of the goals of these weekly meetings that we're going to start having. The schedule is on Tuesdays, we're going to keep on having these community meetings. So that's going to be a high level, just talk about what Maker's been up to, partnerships, events, special guests, new hires, just general overview of what MakerDAO is doing. On Wednesdays, we're going to continue the talks with Rune. So Rune is going to be a recurring guest. And we're going to talk about anything that relates to the foundation proposal, our values, our visions, our goals as an organization. We're going to define terms like what's the 20% principle, what does sustainable finance mean, what is gradual decentralization of governance, talking about how to align all of that with a strong market focus, and eventually get to a point where we've refined the foundation proposal enough to turn it into a real votable proposal that we're going to put in front of the government's framework once that's completed. On Thursdays, we're going to be having a final weekly meeting that is dedicated to 2 major topics, scientific governance and risk. And those are huge, and that's going to take a significant amount of chatting to sort of wrap all of our heads around. So we'll be joined by a special guest, Stephen Becker, our head of risk. He's going to be there every week. And we're going to talk about mechanisms, processes, implementation, philosophy, base assumptions about what risk is and what Maker is up to, how Maker is going to view and implement these concepts. And eventually get to a place where everybody understands how we're going to handle voting and how we're going to handle the onboarding of new asset classes, among many other things, but those are going to be some of the primary focuses. All of these meetings are going to start 9 a.m. on these days, PST, 4 p.m. UTC, and we're going to iterate the first few batches to figure out what the schedules look like and what the actual agendas look like and what we talk about in them. But it's very important that anybody who's interested in MakerDAO or feels like they have something that contribute shows up for these. So we'll get better at publishing agendas and make sure that everything's in Reddit, and possibly start sending out some calendar invites, more reminders in Twitter, and potentially send out some emails at some point in the future. I think that's my rant done, Jess.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, also, let's talk about a little bit of the questions in the chat right now. So Jordan Crandall asked, to what degree is Rune driving the direction of MakerDAO?
Yeah, well, that's obviously a trick question. So the answer is it's always a hard question to answer. So he's not driving anybody, I don't think, but he's obviously a vision guy, and so we are all kind of informed by that vision. But it's a DAO, and so there's lots of people internally that have lots of really great ideas. Everybody's contributed to this vision of implementation, and what we're doing right now is making sure that the people that are involved with it, like outside the office walls, have a chance to start shaping that vision as well. So the reason why that proposal was pushed out there to Medium was to start a conversation, not dictate the future. So these meetings that we're going to be having on Wednesdays with Room will be everybody's opportunity to help shape what that actually means. Did that address the question?
Yeah, and I also think Rune does a good job of taking an input from a lot of different resources and then, carrying that out in his vision. So a lot of the conversations he has publicly and, all those discussions, he really does take that into account when he considers decisions he wants to make or future visions for Maker, for sure.
Yeah, it's always tough when you have a strong personality at the head of your organization with to lead people to believe that maybe we have a dictator here. But I think that there's a lot of corollaries in the wider crypto space where you have sort of a charismatic spokesperson and somebody that has strong vision. But I think these meetings are a perfect example of the fact that we're all shaping what this actual vision is going to be. Was there other questions, Jess?
Yeah, let's see. I think we're good. David Utro commented that Ian is more handsome than he imagined.
He is kind of dreamy, isn't he? I don't know what's going on with this crew.
I put on my makeup today, guys.
Yeah, actually, I'm not going to touch any of that. I don't know. I'm just going to pretend that comment never happened, and we'll move on. It's dangerous territory. Oh yeah, so I also wanted to touch on, this is sort of a recurring theme that I want to keep on reiterating, but I want to make sure that we're more focused on timelines and we're keeping people up to date on when things are going to happen. But having said that, nothing's changed. So we're looking at a Q3 launch still for multi-collateral DAI. We're looking at potentially an early Q3 launch for the new CDP tools dashboard, with a whole host of improvements. I wish I could show you guys some of the amazing things that are there, but I cannot. One of the questions recently was whether hardware support was a consideration for us, and it's critical. So I can tell you guys that Ledger and Trezor and MetaMask and Mist and Parity are all working in the new dashboard. So exciting times are coming. Did we have any just sort of general questions for Maker, that this would be a good time? We have some heavyweights in the call.
Yeah, next year. So Aviva asks about tools for finding the best price for DAI.
Yeah, that was an interesting question that you raised in the chat, and I said it would be hard and somebody should probably go and do that, which might have been a slightly dismissive, and I've been thinking about it since then. And it's an interesting problem that we need to support price feeds for DAI, whereas right now we support price feeds for Ether and Maker and Rep. So I don't know, Nick, maybe you'd have deeper insight into that.
Sorry, come again?
Okay, so the problem is that the MakerDAO ecosystem is kind of reliant on arbitrage, and I shouldn't say reliant. It's one of the several components of complementary sort of incentives that keep the thing stable. But for effective arbitrage, you kind of have to know how much DAI is trading for and all the places where DAI is available. And CoinMarketCap is not the most reliable source in the world. So,
right, but most people who are doing this arbitrage are not manually checking the price on CoinMarketCap and then going over there. Right, that's something an individual may do, but an individual is not trading the lion's share of volume. The lion's share of volume is being done by bots, basically, who are, basically querying every single API from every single exchange and getting the data directly from them. They're not relying on something like CoinMarketCap. So while as an end user, it may be a little bit frustrating to have to use CoinMarketCap, right, and they're potentially not quite true data. In terms of a hazard to the ecosystem, it's really not a big deal at all.
Yeah, it would be a nice feature, I think, or a value add or something, but I think that I'm still not entirely sure whether that's something that the foundation could take on or whether that's a tool for the ecosystem to try and pick up.
So I can throw in a random tidbit here. Me and Mariana and Michael were talking about kind of the future of feeds yesterday and how we're going to build that. And while I don't want to give way too much information on what we're going to do, you will be able to see all of the sourcing info that feeds are using when trying to compile an official price. And so what I mean by that is, let's say we're pulling a price from GDAX, Kraken, and Bitstamp, and then using some algorithm to transform that into the one official feed price. If you look at the feed, you will still be able to see all of the source prices. And so potentially that could have a nice UI attached to it that can kind of show the DAI price on all these different source exchanges. Just throwing it out there. Haven't thought about it that much.
That's pretty cool. Like, if you had to make like a completely crazy guess, how hard would it be to set up a price feed for DAI directly?
Not any different from what we're doing right now. I mean, it's the reason why the USD price feeds work for us right now is because our issuance price is one DAI is $1. Right, the target price is $1. Therefore, if you're trying to uphold the peg, the US dollar price of Ethereum is the reference price you're trying to use anyway.
Oh, I see.
Right. If one day we have a rates policy, right, where the peg is intentionally broken, right, so DAI is trying to actually be more stable than, say, the dollar, then that would change, right? Then you would actually need to have DAI price feeds.
This system doesn't get any more simple over time, I've noticed.
No.
All right, every week there's another rock turned over. I'm not even going to think about that stuff. All right, let's keep on track here. Jess, do you want to introduce Ian for us?
Yeah, sure. Or do you want me to ask anything else? There was also a question. Yeah, so there was also a question from Andre as to if we had any comments on seniority shares.
No, I don't. Not from a high level perspective. I don't think. I think there's been a lot said already that between the relative merits of IOUs and collateral backed and seniority shares, and I'm not sure that I have any deeper insight than what's already available on the internet. I don't think it's a great idea. That's probably not surprising to hear from somebody from MakerDAO, but.
Rune often speaks about them, and on the call that he's hosting or we're going to be present on, you might get some more feedback about seniority shares.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that we'll be digging into some deeper questions, like what are the relative merits of different models, I think, in that call.
Right. Yeah, and furthermore, we have a question as to whether or not we'd like to comment on how the raising of the debt ceiling went.
Is that another trick question?
Yeah.
Do you have any comment on how that process? Oh, and the responses to criticism. So, well, yeah, it's a tough one. So I think that the organization, we plan to raise the debt ceiling before we hit the debt ceiling, and we had that scheduled to actually occur a few days before somebody came into the system and burned or minted 7 million DAI, which is historically completely unprecedented. So it's one of those, I don't know if I want to call it a black swan, but we obviously did not see that coming. So it's some kind of swan. The actual communication around it could have been improved, but yeah, it's a light gray swan. We'll go with that. The communication could have been better, but I think that the fact that we pulled it off and we did it the right way, waiting for a significantly important audit to validate our assumptions and taking using the governance mechanism to make sure that the thing happened the way it was supposed to happen. Those were all sort of according to plan. So the communication, I think, is one of those things where communication is never good enough. So we need to maybe try better. But I'm personally not all that upset about how it went.
I think it's also important to note that there seemed to be some perception in the community that if the debt ceiling is hit, like there was either like global settlement, whatever, but when the debt ceiling is hit, all it means is that DAI can't be produced. And the demand for DAI right now, and the amount that various market makers have in reserves, it would be a long time. Like even if it took us 2 or 3 weeks to raise the debt ceiling, I doubt the peg would have been in trouble. So it's I don't want to say it's a mountain out of a molehill, but hitting the debt ceiling is not some big huge event. It happens, and then you deal with it. I think it's also important to note that the dev fund wasn't used in voting to raise the debt ceiling. It was a collection of maker holders got together and voted on a new proposal, and the proposal succeeded.
Yeah, and I mean also it's not like we didn't want the community to vote, right? The tools that are voting right now are rather crude, at least from a user experience point of view, right? If you are a very technical person and you have this advanced developer environment set up, like there's some people in the community who figured out how to vote. Like they went through like the GitHub and they found the relevant coding bits and they looked up contracts, and there were some very smart individuals. But trying to roll that out to the community in a safe and controlled way, while we're under pressure from this kind of having hit this debt ceiling, that did not seem like the right way to go. And so anyone who's like critical of the way that governance was done at that point, I would urge you to kind of think of us trying to at least like protect NPR holders from doing something wrong. Because in the space, like if you do one typo, if you get one number that you use in byte form, right, instead of hex form or all kinds of stuff, right, you can lose everything. And I don't think when we're under pressure like that, we should be trying to gamble and put our community at risk.
There's also, I think, a social aspect to the criticisms where there's obviously crypto is a very small space when compared to the global economy. There's a number of competing projects, so there's obviously going to be a little bit of trolling and tribalism going on, and you have to kind of look at the criticism and say, is this a valid criticism? Are we being trolled? And also you're not going to keep all of the people happy, even if it was like the most perfect situation and everything went exactly as expected. You're still going to get criticisms.
Sure. Yeah, I see that point. I think I have some years of experience with governance of large groups of stakeholders, and that's definitely the case, James. But I think that that this was a sort of a one-off situation, and in advance of the sort of open-ended governance tools that we're going to release in Q3. Like I said, I'm not terribly upset with the way that it went. I think that we did things sort of according to plan. I think that they worked out well, but the communication could have been better, and we're going to improve on that. Andrew, does that sort of cover some of your concerns? Yep. No, some of these concerns were covered, so let's move on. Partnerships with DAI fiat gateways. I don't think we can comment on upcoming partnerships like that, and maybe Ashleigh can correct me if I'm wrong because she's more plugged into announcements than I am. So when we chat with Ash, we can, or Ashleigh, can you comment on that right now? Or can we talk about?
We can't say any specific details, but to whoever has been listening to the Rune Mill, you are correct. That is in the works, and will be hopefully announced, barring any negative developments, sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's always tricky giving timelines, but I think that I think internally our confidence is pretty high that something cool is going to happen in the next 4 to 6 weeks, but we can't really tell you more than that. So it's one of those announcements of announcements kind of things. It may not be super satisfying, but it's the best we can do. Jess, were there any other questions we missed?
Yeah, so Aviv, you asked, may I clarify my earlier question with regards to the price of DAI? Aviv, do you want to just start talking and clarify your earlier question?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I was just curious because a lot of people who are using DAI, they're either getting into it or getting out of it. And whenever you're getting into it, you want to find the lowest price. When you're getting out of it, you want to be able to buy the most, right? Right now, it's very tough to figure out where the best rate is because it's hard to figure out what the depth of the market is and the price and all of that. So when I'm talking about the price of DAI, I'm not talking about like an Oracle that needs to give a price feed. I'm talking about maybe building a website, kind of like the other websites where essentially we point out different trading pairs, like the Bitcoin DAI trading pair. We point out the volumes and the best price rate and the depth, and maybe compile that all into one website, just so that when business people are looking to get in and out, they have a really easy time to do that. That's kind of what I meant. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I
should. Go ahead.
I mean, we already have infrastructure for most exchanges. So just all that information we already have. We just need to put someone a task to actually like create a UX for it, right?
I'm reasonably sure I've seen that already out there. I think, doesn't Morningstar have an arbitrage generator that shows you? I don't know. It's something we can dig up. Sorry, Aviv, when I was talking about the price feeds, I wasn't looking for, or I wasn't proposing we just present a median price. Part of the mechanisms of the oracles are interacting with numerous APIs to figure out what the current prices are at those locations. So that's what I was thinking of exposing. But your idea for a tool is pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I think that tool could be like a community project too, where you would I could see like a UI where you put in like how much DAI you're looking to acquire or sell, and it would be like, well, get this much from Bittrex and this much from Bitfinex, and kind of like going down. I think it'd be really, really cool to see. I think it could have a really cool UI.
Yeah, I'm just actually writing it down for a new idea for the next bounty that we put out there. It'd be pretty cool. All right, Jess, anything else?
Yeah. So is that good with everyone? Did everyone get their questions answered? David, do you have any more questions or anything? Nope. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's move on to our special guest. So first up is Ian, or Dogebot. Ian, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved with Maker?
Yeah, I sorry, here, am I muted? Okay, yeah. No, I just realized I was playing, you switch all your Google accounts back and forth, and I have one for Dogebot, which is the reason that's my username. Yeah, so I guess my background is like I originally like joined Maker or became a part of a Maker oriented team back in like 2016. Kind of earlier days there with James and a couple of the other individuals. And we were working on SIFs at the time, capital investment firms, back when there was, I guess, different strategies in place or plans to build collateral and then support DAI holistically. But yeah, so I was working with the team back then for about a 6-month stint. And then I was really interested in programming and just, I guess, like expanding my knowledge base in order to be more of an asset technically, whether that be eventually in the future, speaking about technical topics, gaining understanding around them, or figuring out actually just programming in and of itself. And so, yeah, so over the past, I guess, whatever that is, 2 years or so, I've been kind of grinding at that and working towards building my repertoire. Got back in touch with Andy and was working over at DApp for a stint, building a couple of chatbots. And so we kind of got into discussions about chatbots and their importance in a remote organization, and how, realistically, because there isn't one central office where, all DApp employees or all Maker employees can all get together in one exact space. Really, the chat kind of works Rocket Chat works as a hub and an office, so to speak, internal company intranet. So we were kind of playing around with ideas of really, setting our scopes on productivity and how to, build tools and, different programs that would essentially make life easier for people who are working remotely or are interested in, trying to exchange information to other people in a really like streamlined way. So yeah, so that's like a little bit of my history. And then I think it was about 4 months ago is when I joined the Maker team again officially. And I'm kind of just following that same process. So working really closely with Andy, working really closely with Mariano, and getting set up there with the tech ops team, which is kind of a team that's a bit of a mixed bag, but based around essentially streamlining processes for other people at Maker and devising ways to kind of help make their job easier. Ultimately trying to get people really high solitaire scores. So if their job is streamlined and they have extra time, that's ultimately what we want to do. So just kind of right now we're in the process of building out the first couple applications, seeing how things go, and really brainstorming processes and other programs that we can use through Rocket Chat, or may even be external to Rocket Chat, but making people's lives easier. Easier, really. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for doing that and making Makers' lives easier. Yeah. And cool. Is there anything anyone would want to ask Ian about this inspirational story?
Yeah, I have a question I want to ask, and I'm probably going to put Ian on the spot. But you and I spoke recently about a bot and managing CDPs with a bot. Mm-hmm. And obviously you're super busy, so it's not like the #1 priority. But if you went ahead and built something like that, would you be exposing that to the wider community, or would that be sort of an internal demo? Or
yeah, I think obviously security is a priority, and making sure that everything is gravy on the security side. I think once that, obviously there's that prototyping phase where you're essentially just blurting out you know, a solution and trying to get it down on paper, so to speak, but in a program. Then there's that review process of obviously making it cleaner and revising it, and then hopefully getting insight from other people, deciding whether or not it is truly secure or there are any security flaws or issues. But once all of that has been completed, the great part about Rocket Chat, which is what Maker uses for their internal chat system, is that it's a really open community and a lot of bots are shared publicly, and it's really easy to share bots. So I think that would be the, you know, CDP, and we're using chat technology like Slack or FireCamp, I believe, Campfire, or there's other out there. But the bot system I would be using to write that would be HuBot, which is an underlying technology that a lot of bots are built on top of. So that's really shareable in between different chat platforms. So I think seeing it as a more of an open source project, or you know, expanding that to the public so that people can jump in, revise it, and use it, is definitely an option.
Cool. That was going to be my second question, whether we're going to be releasing these things to the wider community, open sourcing them at least.
Yeah, that would definitely be the hope.
All right, cool. If there's no more questions, Jess, did anybody pipe up? I didn't notice.
Yeah, no, I think we're good. Yeah, thanks, Ian. That's awesome.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, if anybody has any external ideas as well, something that would support Maker, or maybe it's, you know, they're making a Maker employee even that's here on the call, what have you. If you guys have process streamlining ideas that would make your guys' jobs easier, something that is preferably oriented to chat, but it could be otherwise, like, let me know. We're kind of building out a list and ranking them in terms of priorities, but yeah, all welcome to any and all ideas for sure.
Nice.
All right, awesome. All right, Ashleigh, you're up. So you're in the hot seat. So do you want to introduce yourself and let us know what you do at Maker?
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, so nice to meet all of you. I work on the business development team here at Maker, so my role is basically to spread the gospel, and as part of that, I'm constantly bragging about our fantastic community and how involved people are. So it's nice to finally meet the people that are making that happen. So thanks for being here. I joined Maker a few months ago, April 1st, to basically, as I mentioned, spread the word. Up until last December, you know, Maker was pretty heads down on building the tech, and once the product got out there and it was working, and we started to receive so much positive feedback, it became clear that, okay, it's time to bring in the suits. So I'm a reformed finance person. Spent the first bit of my career in banking world, fintech, and the last 2 years as an investor for a family office in private equity and VC. But I've always been interested in blockchain, not always, but since 2013, February 2013 or so. And so it's nice to be here. We have a lot of exciting updates around BD pretty much on a constant basis, constant new partnerships. But the one that I wanted to chat about with you guys briefly today was TradeShift, which I will put the link in the chat just in case anyone has not yet seen it. But Rune announced in partnership with TradeShift at TechCrunch and Zug last week a pretty exciting partnership, which is one of the first sort of real kind of sweeping use cases for MakerDAO's technology, not just on the DAI use case, but also on the credit side. So essentially what it entails, so TradeShift is a supply chain finance and payments technology company. And so what they do is help small businesses collect payments, manage their invoices and accounts receivable. They help with cross-border settlement, pretty much anything that you can imagine in a small to medium-sized business as regards cross-border or accounts receivable type payments. And They are a very innovative company. They just raised a $250 million round, which was led by Goldman Sachs. So, you know, they're very successful already. But what they are really good about doing is sort of looking ahead and how can they continue to support their customers with the technologies that are available to them. And so the way that our partnership with TradeShift works right now, and it's kind of going to evolve over time, but essentially they've implemented a program called TradeShift Cash, whereby small businesses can essentially tokenize their accounts receivable sort of at a granular level. So let's say, you know, they've sent a bunch of lumber, you know, across the seas and are awaiting payment on that. They need that money right now to buy more lumber so that they can bid on a new project or whatever it may be. Well, they aren't able to get it until they're paid. So what they're able to do with the system is tokenize that account receivable and then essentially borrow DAI against it, or those are basically bought with DAI rather. And so then they're able to transfer that DAI, convert it to fiat, which they will be doing with one of our partners that we're working with now once that gets up and running, and use that money to shorten the life cycle of their supply chain and ultimately do more business and increase their revenues. Kind of further down the line, and this is, you know, probably about, I would say, a year out, we'll also be looking to create baskets of these assets, these tokenized accounts receivable, which will be able to serve as a collateral type actually within the MakerDAO ecosystem, a relatively stable sort of real world asset, the likes of which we have not yet seen, which will be very, very interesting and exciting.
That's one of the parts that fascinates me the most, because for DAI to get huge, we need to have tokenized the world kind of thing happening. But tokenizing the world is super hard and super complicated, and it takes an organization with mind-bogglingly sophisticated processes. And TradeShift seems to be uniquely positioned to take care of that kind of complexity, which is amazing to me. So the concept of bundling invoices is pretty earth-shattering, I think. So what they're doing is they're kind of being the reputation managers in that stage.
Yep. So TradeShift has already kind of started to market this this program, and I'll send you guys the link to it so if you want to take a closer look. And answer someone else's question in the chat, Aviv. Tokenized accounts receivable isn't as crazy as it might sound. So in the business world, this is typically the way that people can finance and achieve liquidity against their account receivable is what's known as factoring. So let's say you sell something and you send an invoice for $1,000, but you need to continually repurchase more inventory so you continue to make more sales so you can make a spread. You can actually sell that $1,000, that piece of debt, that $1,000 that you're owed rather, to other third parties who will buy it at a discount and wait and take that time risk in order to collect on it so that you can achieve liquidity right then. So this is already a process that takes place in the regular world and across the supply chain everywhere. James said payday loans for business, exactly. Except hopefully, you know, less shark-like in most cases. But yeah, and I guess what's interesting is that over time you can see that so right now accounts receivable are really only sold to businesses that are set up to do that, right? A regular user like myself or Aviv wouldn't go out into the marketplace and say, okay, great, where can I buy some, accounts receivable for lumber or rebar or whatever it is. In this tokenized market, this actually broadens and expands the scope of people who are actually able to acquire these things, and that will ultimately, we think, bring the cost of borrowing down for small businesses, which can have huge implications across the global supply chain. Any questions there, or should I move on to Jordan's question?
Okay, go ahead, Aviv.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I understand the concept of accounts receivable. I'm just a little bit unsure of what's going on there. If you don't mind kind of recapping here. So I understand that, you make a sale and there's a month or a few weeks before you get the money in. So what you do is it's just an insurance thing. Someone buys off the debt for you, gives you like 95% of the money you need so you can continue your business. That totally makes sense. I'm really trying to see where DAI or Maker or CDPs come in to make this process more efficient, and how this like very legal, like real world thing, these are all contracts that are backed by like regulations and legal jurisdictions. How can that be used in the crypto space, which is very much about bearer instruments and sort of global, like non-legal kind of entities? So if you could kind of clarify that, that'd be great.
Yeah, no question that there are lots of legal, we're looking at a variety of different types of security tokens, everything from, tokenized real estate to tokenized commodities. And so there are, of course, lots of legal questions that need to be answered all over the space. But the method of tokenizing these is actually not as difficult as one might imagine, right? It is sort of in a way much like a bearer bond, and it entitles the owner to the revenues from that process. Now, what smart contracts can do is make that process automatic, right? So I acquire this invoice is tokenized. I buy it for 95 cents on the dollar or whatever it may be. Whenever that user receives payment, I then receive it in DAI automatically. We'll have a fiat on off ramp, so it could even be done seamlessly to where it's transferred to dollars. But essentially, it gives you the ownership of whatever are the proceeds from that outstanding invoice. And there are going to be several different things that need to be done with smart contracts in order to, and we're working with TradeShift's tech team to bust things out now. But it's not as complex as you might think. So we're excited about it. Good question, though.
And that's sort of TradeShift's role, is to handle that, the backing of the collateral bundles that they're pushing out there, maintaining the reputation or the establishing the quality of the debt and bundling the proper qualities together. Is that true? It's sort of like a CDO or something.
Exactly. So TradeShift will be, it says right here on their website that I sent in the TradeShift Cash that TradeShift Cash uses your invoice and business history on TradeShift to match your needs. So they will be sort of managing the reputations of users that are using this service, which is helpful. But ultimately, as we tokenize bundles of these, which will become used for collateral, it'll be up to our risk team and the MKR token holders to fully verify the risk associated with these types of assets before allowing it on as collateral.
Wow, that's kind of mind-boggling.
Right? Okay, so Jordan's question, how will buyers for these accounts receivable be found? Sounds like a good use for Dharma, but will it be directly through TradeShift? So TradeShift, as of right now, as we've kind of been talking about this, is planning to create the market. They have a technology system that's used on the back end of so many supply chain systems around the world and globally that easily plug into all kinds of databases and POS machines and the software that makes our global supply chain systems run. And so these buyers are consistently bidding on these tokens. So what it will do is open it up to that market, but also create a way for other types of users that are not necessarily global business concerns to come in and bid on those as well and be involved in that process. So for right now, TradeShift is planning to build out that marketplace. But I think, part of the idea is that other builders and developers can build different types of B2B or B2C or C2B rather marketplaces where, you or I could participate in those markets. All right, and then did TradeShift approach Maker, or was it the other way around? So TradeShift was introduced to Rune, if I'm not mistaken, by a third party, but they have been talking about blockchain solutions in their business for some time. I'm blanking on when they actually first met, but it was in a pretty immediate, eureka moment where, okay, this is what we've been looking for. And one comment to add to that is it's been really cool to see. I don't know, a lot of projects, they announce these partnerships, and it's sort of like, okay, we're just going to slap this brand name on our blockchain project. But it's been really cool to see how involved TradeShift has been in this process. Our teams have met, overseas and here multiple times, and they are very excited about it and are putting a lot of resources toward building out these capabilities. And to Jordan's last question, so I would be able to bid with DAI on TradeShift's website. That is the idea right now that I think that they're planning to implement. There may be at some point a dashboard that's more related to Maker, but those details sort of remain to be seen. Expect to hear more about that in the next few months. Any other TradeShift?
That was amazing, Ashley. I think that the questions are ramping down a bit. I think we're going to get you back for more meetings because we need that kind of financial insight.
Yeah, and if I could, just one quick plug. Again, thank you guys so much for being here. As I mentioned, business development team, we're always looking for, if you know anyone in your personal networks that you think their project could be a good user of DAI or could integrate CDPs in any way, or could even potentially be a credit user, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll just put my email in the chat if anyone comes to mind, and would love to hear from you guys, and thanks for your help.
Actually, that's a great point. Maybe I'm going to throw another question at you before we shut it down. So a lot of the partnerships that we've seen so far have been kind of leveraging what a stablecoin can do for them. So has there been much interest from other organizations about how to use CDPs in their businesses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So there are a few things that really come to mind. As I mentioned earlier, we're talking to a lot of different types of securities token providers. Some of the big names that you probably heard about. A lot of these are around things like real estate or commodities contracts, etc. And they are kind of actually really interested in how so traditionally, if someone were to buy some shares in a REIT, for example, which is a real estate investment trust, basically a basket of real estate assets, you can buy a lot of them publicly traded. You can achieve liquidity against it, but it's highly regulated and it's quite difficult to do that. And so some of these newer projects are actually interested in utilizing our system so that their users, the people that are acquiring, their investors that are buying these tokenized real estate assets, for example, could achieve short-term liquidity using our system in a more sort of decentralized way. And we're also seeing, for example, we have a partnership with Olympus Labs, which is a really cool project that is creating basically indexed baskets of different crypto assets. Right now, it's mostly the ones, the ERC20s that you know about, but I think they're looking to bring in other types of, non-fungible tokens and securities tokens at some point. They're actually going to, on their roadmap is to index these tokens in an actual basket so that those can be collateralized on our system. So you can think, instead of just having one collateral type, an Ether CDP and a Digix CDP, etc., you could actually have a basket of different assets and decrease the volatility that way. So that's a big selling point for them as well. We're also talking to some DEXs about integrating CDPs so that they can offer margin to their customers without actually having to manage that risk themselves and to sort of greatly reduce the cost of borrowing on margin for DEXs. So there are a lot of interesting ways for people to implement CDPs around any kind of financial product or derivative. A lot going on there.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm glad to hear that. So it's been constant. I'm constantly sort of surprised that people haven't picked up on how kind of earth-shattering CDPs are, especially people that are holding a lot of crypto or a lot of assets that are tokenized. So.
Yeah, they get me really excited too, Rich.
Yeah. All right, I think that we're coming up on 2 minutes left. So if anybody has any absolutely last-minute questions, we could possibly get to them. But otherwise, I think we're going to shut it down. So thanks, Ashleigh. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Ian, for showing up. It was a great meeting. I'll be posting this on YouTube soon, so everybody can check it out and see how they looked.
Hi, guys. See you soon.
How's
All
that?
right.
Thanks,
Bye.
you guys.
Have a good one.
Yeah.